Okay, we got about 1 minute to go, and we'll be ready. Just hang out a little bit, Earth Explorers. We'll be ready to go in just a minute. Still tuning in our other affiliates. That's all good. Foxhole's live, D-Live's live. It looks like we got video everywhere. We are so happy. All right, let's go ahead and get the studio dialed in.
You must unite what has been set asunder.
We, TFR, Truth Frequency Radio.
Here we go, hour one. And greetings, Earth Explorers. Welcome to X Squared Radio. I'm your host, Brooks Agnew, coming to you live from an undisclosed location east of the Appalachian Mountains. This is where the past meets the future. In here, the results are always positive. We might go a little past your imagination, but have no fear. You will be safely traveling with us. We have a lot of stories to go over tonight, so pay close attention. We are streaming live through the Truth Frequency Radio Network out of Las Vegas, Nevada. And we are also streaming live on Foxhole, Twitch, Facebook, D-Live, Twitter, YouTube, and Rumble. So you can tune in on all of those as well. Hopefully all of our streams are working well. Foxhole looks like it's spinning just a little bit. I'm not really sure what's going on there. We'll try to keep things going. Let's see here if we can get that to behave itself. D-Live looks like it's spinning as well. I don't know what's going on there, but we will do our best to keep everything rolling. Looks like our bit rate's really low today. I'm not really sure why. Been having server problems of late, but hopefully you can hear me okay in the chat room. Please acknowledge 5x5. Should be good to see you out there. Greenheart in Vermont. Nice. J. Scott Weiler. Ah, good. You got your order. That's good. That's good. Trucker Will, nice to see you out there. William, nice to see you out there in California. And Wrecking Ball. Good crew tonight. Okay, let's get started. We have a lot to go over. The title of tonight's program is The End of the Republic. Now, we're streaming live also on YouTube, but that's only going to be for part of the program tonight. We're going to get into some free speech areas that YouTube does not like to hear. As you know, Google routinely violates our civil rights, and so we do not let them carry our content. We censor them on purpose because we want you to be able to get this truth, justice, and the American way. So if you're listening on YouTube, and there are quite a few out there that are, we have about, 1,400 notifications that go out. They turn off our notifications on a regular basis. People have to up their notification, hit the bell on your YouTube. You're going to get notified that we're going live, and that's great. We love you. We want you to be with us. But YouTube doesn't carry this whole program, so you're going to have to look down below, and you're going to see links right there. Yep, that one right there. And those are other free speech platforms: Twitch, Foxhole, even Twitter, DLive, and of course Rumble. And you can listen to the entire program live there and keep up with it. So, the end of the Republic, we fear it. We look toward it, and yet we see it unfolding around us. You know, Americans have long forgotten what it is like to live under a king. I mean, it's easy to do, after all. America was formed with the law as our only king. What was once heralded as a rule of law, though, has decayed into a rich boys' club and a rule by law. They use the law as a shield and a sword. They use lawyers and what I call litigious terrorism to destroy their enemies while raping and murdering children for pleasure. In fact, it is a requirement for the boys' club. I hope you have looked up from your grindstone from time to time just to see where we are. We have been and have seen the penultimate puppet force, every free person to adopt green policies across the West. Does it have even the slightest potential of success? No. It is the unsolvable problem for the story that they are telling you. It also comes at enormous expense to the working and middle classes. The rich boys can still fly their jets, diesel power their yachts, and traffic their victims. But you will be tangled with an extension cord and strangled with a mask. One extreme climate measure after another has driven the loss of traditional blue-collar jobs in manufacturing, construction, and energy, while other environmental regulations have inflated housing prices beyond the reach of all but the rich. Don't worry. They will build and rent you apartments and mobile homes. The clearest evidence points the West down the road to serfdom. Rather than maintaining our capitalist societies where a large asset-owning middle class underpins a stable democratic system, we are becoming stratified feudal societies. Rather than free market forces and competition allowing the public to choose the best product for the best price, we are forced into cattle chutes where we are jabbed and indoctrinated and harvested for our organs and our babies. Home and small businesses, the owners are in free fall, especially among the young and the less well-off. A group of technocratic elites are establishing themselves as permanent rulers in the apparatus of the administrative state. And corporate oligarchs are coming to dominate both the economy and even broader society. Less than 1 in 10 under the age of 30 ever expect to own a home of their own, or have permanent employment for that matter. The credit bureau has morphed into a social scoring system where free thinkers will never have a score that allows them to buy a new car or a home. And this transition has been occurring for quite some time. But it has been accelerated by the COVID-19 inspired lockdowns and the zeal with which Western governments have thoughtlessly adopted net zero emissions targets, whatever the hell that means. They planned it. just like they planned 9/11 and the Great Depression. Who needs a war when they can encourage and authorize the masked to kill or openly discriminate against the unmasked? Both play out as an aggressive form of reverse Robin Hood, asset stripping, taking from the poor and giving to the rich. Australia is now officially committed to a net zero emissions by 2050. And that means really net zero freedom. It might even translate to net zero people. But beyond the slogan, technology, not taxes, the Australian people are petrified in wonder as to how the government plans on achieving its newfound ambition. The UK Treasury, by contrast, recently released a net zero report review, which provides some detail of how the UK government expects to reach net zero. The report includes a surprisingly honest admission from the bureaucracy. The costs and benefits of the transition to a net zero economy will ultimately pass through to you, to households, through a range of different channels. If we can't get you one way, we will get you another way. It includes a helpful chart that shows that regardless of the specific policy or mechanism, the costs of net zero will always fall on you. That is, everyday moms and dads and workers. This insight is evident to many, but it is still disguised. It's still a big psyop to most people. The slogan, technology, not taxes, is not only meaningless, but it's stupid and it's deceptive. The range of taxpayer-funded schemes means higher taxes, plain and simple. Subsidizing certain kinds of energy, electric cars, solar panels, means people who still have diesel tractors or gas-powered cars or boats, they're going to be fined to pay for the higher costs of batteries and chargers, and of course recycle operations that are already hopelessly unable to turn a profit. Requiring businesses to adopt technology they don't want or need results in higher prices and, of course, less choice. Effectively, it's a tax by stealth. It's a stealth tax. The report also notes that the highest income households emit about 3 times as much carbon as the lowest income households. Imagine that. They don't freaking care. They already know it is entirely fake and only applies to the poor. On Plug Share, and there's a couple other apps out there you can pull it up. Where do I plug my car in? Here's where I go. You already noticed that charging places outnumber gasoline places 5-1 in most cities. Yeah, 5-1. How far do you have to drive to find a gas station today? Can be a little ways, 2, 3, 4 miles. Well, it's going to get worse. You know, the organizations that used to have in-ground tanks all that's being regulated out. Now they all have to be above ground tanks, and they have to have like a retaining wall around in case the tank springs a leak. And that's how they protect the ground, you know, from getting gas or oil leaks or something like that into it. But those above ground tanks are very expensive, and they take up a small amount of real estate. And so what happens when you add a grade or you add, say, biodiesel or something, you don't have the room. You don't have the room on property to put into the tank, so you can't carry the fuel. And what will happen is soon the regulations will come out. Oh, these tanks have fugitive emissions. They're leaking, gasoline fumes into the air. We have to do away with all these above ground tanks. And what? You can't have underground tanks. You can't have above ground tanks. You can't have tanks. Yeah, and that means you can't have a gas station. Imagine that. When the largest corporation banks, financiers, and technology companies, along with governments, align on a policy that the voters never agreed to, it cannot be good for working people. Democracy. The republic is in danger. It is in danger. So we are, as many people realize, we're at war. And in most cases, people are at war with their own government. They're at war with their own government. They're at war with their own people. And the government is forcing us to go to war with each other. They're stratifying us, dividing us up. Rich and poor, black and white, religious, non-religious, working, non-working, you name it. People that are jab, people that are not jab, people that wear masks, people that don't wear masks. They're dividing us up and pitting us against one another so that we will take the eye off of who the real enemy is. You know, when we talk about, on this program, the new American Civil War, we're not talking about a civil war like we fought in the 1860s, where we take up arms against one another and kill one another for land. We're not talking about that kind of war. We're talking about a war of ideas. We're talking about a war of principle. And if we give up our principles, we slide into this serfdom. And a lot of people don't know what a serf is. But in medieval times, you had a king, and the king had vassals. The vassals were like oligarchs. They were rich guys that owned a lot of land, had a castle, had some knights. They would pledge their support to the king. The king would offer the leadership and, of course, protection, because he could consolidate other vassals to pull them in and protect you from outsiders if you were to get invaded. And then the vassal provides central protection for his production ability, and most of that production is in the form of food and livestock and maybe weapons and, you know, certain skills that they might have based on a mine that might be local or a forest that might be local, or the fact that they might be on the coast and have access to fish. Something that vassal provides to the kingdom allows them to trade with other vassals, but it is based upon the population that he can provide protection to, because, you know, the vassal and the princes and the royalty, they live inside the castle, but the serfs, you know, they take care of the land outside the castle, and it could be tens of thousands of acres, or acres of woods, or acres of crops, or acres of animals that they take care of. They're unprotected out there, so they rely on the vassal and his knights to take care of the law over those serfs. But the serfs own nothing. Okay, they are just working poor. They get to keep a little bit of what they make if the a trade isn't worth more than that. We saw what happened to the Irish and the Scots when the British basically collected all the potatoes, and they were growing potatoes, and there was no potato famine. There was no potato famine. It's just the British took all the potatoes and they exported them, or they used them up for England. And so the Irish and Scots, they had nothing to eat, and the British did not care. They didn't care. So under Virtual Joe and his gang of criminals, the nation was told during his campaign that there was going to be this new unity. Remember that? I'm not going to be president over a red nation or blue, you know, blah, blah, blah. You remember all that, right? It was a new moderate plan, a path that would bring Americans together into one big happy family. You won't own a home, or you won't own a car. You won't have a personal savings account or Social Security, but you're going to be happy as long as you maintain a healthy social credit score. You remember that? You don't remember that. That was being sold to us all through the campaign. Yes, right. Spacelink and Lander brings up a good point. Ireland's 90% vaxxed, and they're dying. They're dying. He says England finally killed them. Yeah, I was listening to an Irishman speak yesterday, and he was not happy. It was too late for them, though, I feel. I think they could have resisted a long time ago, and maybe they could have saved themselves. But Virtual Joe was eventually inaugurated, or something like that. But within hours, the Trump economy and the prosperity that he had led the world to for 4 years was smashed to pieces. Inflation, as I said, in January, February, when he took office, by the time we get to Christmas, that dollar you have in your pocket right now, it's going to be worth 70 cents. 70 cents by Christmas. And guess what? We're there. We're there. Inflation has robbed 30% of your money that you had saved in the bank. The southern border, illegal alien crisis, the attacks on pro-lifers in America, the Afghanistan disaster, inflation and energy crisis Jimmy Carter would be proud of, and more. He dozed and shit his way from one public appearance to another without answering a single question from reporters. And Jen Psaki does his talking for him. And actually, that idea of unity is so far from the truth. A columnist now has contributed a piece to the Daily Mail that actually raises the prospect of a new civil conflict. This civil war I have been talking about for almost a year now. It's not terribly unlikely. We saw what happened in Kenosha when the left has this disease. This main symptom, you talk about zombies, you watch movies like Zombieland or The Walking Dead or blah, blah, blah. What do they have in common? All the zombies have this uncontrollable, walk in straight into gunfire insanity that drives them to want to gnaw the meat off the bone of anybody who's not a zombie, right? I don't think that's that outlandish. I mean, it's a type and a shadow of what's going on now. Look what happened in Kenosha. Look what happened when Kyle Rittenhouse went to his parents' gas station to try to defend it, to the car lot that had already been burned the night before, to try to defend his family. Look what happened. Those zombies walked straight into the muzzle of a gun, swinging and raging and eye-bulging and kicking, and just looked like insanity, a rage that you cannot describe, until finally he had to shoot them. Now, he didn't have to double tap, but, you shoot them. And that's what he had to do to defend himself. I mean, how likely is it that there's going to be some sort of violence, some sort of civil conflict in the next few months or year? I got to tell you, it's not out of the realm of possibilities. Not in the face of rage like that. Look what happened to Kohl's yesterday. Cars of people pulled up and they ran inside the store like maniacs. Because Kyle Rittenhouse was acquitted, they said, let's go shopping. And they went in and they scooped like $50,000 worth of stuff in 30 seconds, and they were out. There was no stopping them. All you could do is film them and say, what the hell? Quick break from TFR. We'll keep going with you guys. Hang on just a second here while I... Well, we don't really know how to shut it off with this new Skype now, do we? I guess we'll just have to see what's up, what's going on. And we have no way to mute anybody.
It's amazing how people have been raving about iAlive all over Facebook. They've been posting their testimonials just because they want to get the word out because it's worked so well for them. If you're not familiar with iAlife, it's a 99% pure CBD oil, but the secret is the synergy between the hemp and the ayahuasca vine, the non-psychoactive component of the ayahuasca tea. We recently received an email from a wife whose husband has Parkinson's. For the first time, he's been able to sleep through the entire night. Another customer reported that they're no longer using NSAIDs because their tennis elbow has been relieved with iAlife. The reports have been phenomenal and much more than we ever expected. Everyone should have access to this. That's why if you head on over to ialife.com right now and use coupon code TFR, we'll give you $5 towards your order. And we'll even ship it worldwide. That's ialife.com, AYA life.com.
This is iHeartRadio.
iHeartRadio.
iHeartRadio makes you want to move.
When you have a great melody,
A song to last forever.
Instantly connected.
I love it when the beat goes.
Did you know you can listen to Truth Frequency Radio on iHeartRadio? Just download the app to your smart car, smartphone, or smart TV and get the best of TFR wherever you are.
iHeartRadio.
I'll see you there.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
For 5,000 years, the world was ruled with wooden ships by one man. 242 years ago, a small group of free men crafted a new nation built on liberty and freedom. Global elites have been fighting to destroy this new nation called America ever since. Based on actual events, Charm of Favor tells the true story of how they corrupted the election system. They infiltrated federal agencies and murdered witnesses, judges, and even presidents to keep from being caught. Now, the largest and wealthiest crime syndicate the world has ever known has been drawn out of the shadows. They have killed hundreds of Americans and recently attempted to assassinate half our congressmen. Still, they escape arrest through an almost supernatural charm of favor. Read Charm of Favor and be prepared to open your eyes to what may lie just around the corner. Charm of Favor is available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble.
We are TFR.
My faith in destiny is all I need to prevail.
Truth Frequency Radio.
All right. So glad you could stay with us through that break. Before we continue with this story, I'm just looking at how much free speech content we have here, because we're going to start getting into more scientific areas here in just a second. But before we do, I just wanted to congratulate you all for being here tonight. I don't think I'd be here without you, that's for sure. And I am reading all the stuff in the chat room. I'm so glad everybody's getting their orders. I can talk a little bit more about that when we say goodbye to YouTube, because they don't want you to get this order, but that's okay. We will take care of it. What is that? Space Lincoln Lander says, Fear the Walking Dead was great tonight. Yes, it probably was. Good to see you out there, Mr. Virtue. And we have a huge crowd on YouTube tonight, and I really, really appreciate you guys. We're going to stay with YouTube for about another 10 minutes, and then we're going to move them into the free speech zone, the friend zone, and we're going to carry on with other free speech platforms. But You know, the warning of this coming conflict, it comes from a freelance writer, Malcolm Kyun, who lives in Uppsala, Sweden. He says, how likely is it that there will be some sort of civil conflict in the near or mid-future for the United States? He said it's significant that America is nearing its 250th birthday, a point at which empires either tend to either slowly or very quickly fall apart, he suggested. And then there is a loss of the legitimacy of its elite, as well as failing faith in elections. We definitely have the failing faith in the elections. It doesn't matter how many of us go and vote. They have more at Ballots R Us. America is currently a malarial swamp of misguided faiths, creeds, soothsayers, and itinerant prophets. From Q to vaccine scientism to various forms of pseudo-Gnosticism centered around trans people, he explains. Talk of insurrection, secession, civil conflict, civil war. It's no longer the chatter of the gullible or the mentally ill or the conspiracy theorists. It's entering the average conversation of society. People want to save the republic. They really do. And they will use violence as a last resort, no matter the foe. They have declared war on their recalcitrant countrymen and are waiting for the right moment to take their shot, so to speak. The year 2021 has been a spectacular year for signs of political decline. We're watching Virtual Joe decline with each time he craps his pants. They absolutely cannot survive unless good men will finally do something. There is political division among the elites. There's increasing loss of legitimacy in the eyes of the population. We've had our asses kicked militarily around the world, and a new and very ominous crisis of the real economy with no end date in sight is upon us. America and the world that depends upon her has lost its true leader. They've lost the rule of law. If justice is not the result of law, it is of no value, right? Patriots want to place the rule of law back at the head of the government, but there is not much confidence that this can be done, not without force. The bad guys, they're simply not going to surrender. They must be forced from office or terminated. Think tanks are calling patriots crazy and reckless. But this is a misconception. A violent civil conflict would not last more than a few hours, because the U.S. military will most likely not fight the American people on American soil when they capture every single state capital through the force of arms. Patriots, they make up 90% of the U.S. military. And when the crimes of the politicians are laid bare, and they are horrible, with thousands and thousands of dead children and mountains of cash that they have embezzled, no soldier is going to raise a hand against justice. Soldiers will be outnumbered 100 to 1. And we, the people, we are going to hold the line. And while the U.S. military is indeed powerful and lavishly funded, it is a military designed to fight other states. Warfare between states is bound by rules and regulations, and it is based on consent. Now, this might seem a strange assertion to make, given that a country cannot just decline a war declaration from an enemy, but it holds true, Earth explorers. There's a formal or informal understanding of who is an actual combatant and who is not. Patriots will not declare nor accept war with the American military. Not going to happen. The war is against the Chinese Communist coup that has mortally wounded our government from the inside. We want it back just the way it was. Patriot combatants are not going to play by the rules. An insurgency in America has about as much reason as the Native Americans once did to follow the rules of their enemies. They are under no compulsion to wear blinking strobe lights to make themselves easier for the drones to target, in other words. They cannot be seen because they are in plain sight. They cannot be spotted coming because they are already here. They are filled with love and honor, not hatred and rage like the members of the coup. What makes the U.S. military powerful? From high-tech weapons to immense power are not just useless, but counterproductive. In counterinsurgency, the U.S. military is nowhere near large enough to stop the people once they make their move. During Operation Banner, the British military deployed almost 20,000 soldiers in Northern Ireland to keep a lid on that wayward province. The U.S. Armed Forces consist of about 1.3 million active duty, but this is spread over 5 branches: Army, Marine Corps, Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard, and only a minority of military personnel are actually combat troops. It is thus extremely unlikely that the armed forces could scramble more than 100,000 regulars willing to do the job of holding an M4 carbine and patrolling down the main street of any town, Texas or Oklahoma or California. Ireland is 2% the size of Texas. Texas is 5% the size of America. And I got news for you. Americans are in this fight. And they don't need a leader. They only need a reason. There are at least 20 million trained, armed, and motivated veterans that are capable of arresting thousands of traitors within the next hour without firing a shot. Violence will only occur if the U.S. military tries to free the criminals who have been incarcerated awaiting trial and execution. And dispatching military units to govern at gunpoint the very areas from which they came would provide an unreliable force. You know why? Because ordering brutality against patriots, where soldiers will be ordered to fight and kill their own friends and their own family, is going to be disobeyed. Period. And the even bigger elephant in the room is that soldiers attacking or ordering attacks on American civilians would be captured as prisoners of war before they made it 50 feet. The ranks of America's military are now sullen and battered after 20 years of failed nation building, while its corrupt officer corps is increasingly alienated from the world of its grunts, mirroring that same culture. Economic and social divide is currently poisoning civilian life in America. General Milley is a pink-haired racist who would be among the first casualties of this war. If there is one time throughout history where civil wars are actually likely to occur, it is precisely when an aristocratic elite orders the U.S. military to fight its political enemies. We watched it happen in 2014, 15, 16, 17, and 18, didn't we? That is when the states are at their weakest and when the people are at their absolute strongest. And sadly, that may be where America is right now. All it needs is a shooting solution. I agree, William. Ireland may be dead. It's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time. All right, let's talk a little bit about lunar oxygen. We'll keep our YouTube people around just a little bit longer. We can make it through this story. You say, but wait, there's no air on the moon. Well, yes, there is. It's not in the atmosphere. It's in the soil. Alongside the advances in space exploration, we've recently seen much time and money invested into technologies that would allow effective space resource utilization. And at the forefront of these efforts has been a laser-sharp focus on finding the best way to produce oxygen on the moon. Oh yeah, oxygen on the moon. Last month, the Australian Space Agency and NASA signed a deal. Oh no, the CCP's not happy about this deal. They signed a deal to send an Australian-made rover to the moon under the Artemis program. Artemis is a much larger space program, has many parts to it that are designed to develop what we call cislunar space. This is a space between Earth and the moon and around the moon. And the goal is to collect lunar rocks that could ultimately provide breathable oxygen on the moon. We're not going to bring the oxygen back to the Earth. Although the moon does not have, it does have an atmosphere. It's very, very thin. It's right down next to the soil almost. And it's composed mostly of hydrogen and neon and argon, which are noble gases. It is not the sort of gaseous mixture that could sustain oxygen-dependent mammals such as humans or mice or rodents. Although, that said, there is plenty of oxygen on the moon. It just isn't in gaseous form. It's trapped in what we call the regolith, okay? That's the layer of rock and fine dust that covers the moon's surface. And it doesn't take a lot of energy to recover it. Oxygen can be found in many of the minerals in the ground around us, and the moon is mostly made of the same rocks you'll find on Earth. Minerals such as silica, aluminum, iron, magnesium oxides dominate the moon's landscape. All of these minerals contain oxygen. It's just not in a form our lungs can access yet. On the moon, these minerals exist in a few different forms, including hard rock, dust, gravel, stones covering the surface. This material was resulted from the impacts of meteorites crashing into the lunar surface over millions and millions of years. Some people call the moon's surface layer lunar soil, but as a soil scientist, the writer says he's hesitant to use this term. Soil, as we know it, is pretty magical stuff, but it only occurs on Earth. We don't see it anywhere on any other planet. Soil is created by microorganisms and an interaction between life and minerals over eons of time. You kind of create a living, sustainable, nutritious layer in the earth that roots can pass through and gain nutrition from. And the result is a matrix of minerals that are not present in the original rocks. Earth's soil is imbued with remarkable physical, chemical, biological characteristics. Meanwhile, the materials on the moon's surface is basically just in its original untouched form. Nothing's been converted by microorganisms. So the moon's soil, as it were, the dirt, the dust that makes up the surface of the moon, is actually, by weight, about 45% oxygen. Yeah, 45% oxygen. But that oxygen is tightly bound into the minerals. So you might be familiar with this if you know about electrolysis, but on Earth, this process is commonly used in manufacturing, such as to produce aluminum. Electrical current is passed through a liquid form of aluminum oxide, typically called alumina, and it separates the oxygen from the aluminum. In this case, the oxygen is produced as a byproduct. But on the moon, the oxygen would be the product. Okay, we would make an effort to capture that. And it's a pretty straightforward process, but there's a catch. It requires a lot of energy to do. It takes many more acres to produce enough oxygen to sustain one human being's respiration than what it would here on Earth. And extracting oxygen from the regolith would also require substantial industrial equipment, which there isn't any on the moon right now. We'd have to send it there and assemble it. We have the technology to do this here on Earth, but we have to move this apparatus to the moon and, of course, generate enough electricity to run it. It's going to be a challenge. Now, earlier this year, Belgium-based startup Space Application Services announced it was building 3 experimental reactors to improve the process of making oxygen via this electrolysis. They expect to send the technology to the moon in about 3 years to be part of the European Space Agency's in situ resource utilization. It's called ISRU. It's also part of the Artemis space program. Now, that said, when we do manage to pull it off, how much oxygen might the moon actually deliver? Well, a lot. Like, a lot. Enough to fill the interior areas of the moon, like I talk about in my book, Asteroid Mining, the Future of Energy, where we take these interior lunar vents that we have found, these lava vents, and we seal them up, and we build an atmosphere inside that space. Now, we're talking a space, that could contain Manhattan, okay, or Philadelphia. It's a big space. Once you build an atmosphere inside that area, all you have to do is provide light and water, and you have a habitat. Each cubic meter, which is about 2 wheelbarrow loads, each cubic meter of lunar regolith contains about 1.4 tons of minerals on average, including about 630 kilos of oxygen. And NASA knows it takes about 800 grams of oxygen a day. So 630 kilos of oxygen would keep a person alive for about 2 years. 1 or 2 good-sized lunar wheelbarrow loads, which is about 1,300 pounds or so, is enough to keep a person alive for 2 years. It's not much dirt. There's a lot of oxygen in the soil. Now, let's assume that the average depth of the regolith is about 10 meters. That's about 33, 34 feet. And we can extract all the oxygen from this. That means that the top 10 meters of the moon's surface could provide enough oxygen to support all of us, 8 billion people on the Earth for 100,000 years. I know. And then all we would do is breathe it into CO2, right? So obviously plants could turn it back into oxygen. That's what I'm talking about. That's how much oxygen is on the moon. So you can have a colony of 1 million people living on the moon. 200,000, 300,000 people with a fully breathable atmosphere inside that lunar cavity. And they could work and live on the moon, traveling back and forth between the moon and Earth, and not have to take anything from Earth to the moon except tools. Yeah, it's a big deal, and it can happen. It's also going to depend on how effectively we manage to extract and use the oxygen, but it's pretty amazing, isn't it, the resource that's there? Now, having said that, we do have it pretty good here on Earth, and we should do everything we can to protect this blue planet, because good planets are hard to come by, especially our soil. But I'm just saying that a lunar society, a lunar colony could be built, and it could work. All right, so let me give you a 2-minute warning on YouTube. So 2-minute warning on YouTube. We have a pretty good sized group, 100 or so listening on YouTube. And now I want you to migrate to one of the other free speech platforms. Go to Twitch, go to Rumble, go to Foxhole. Just make your way over there, because I want tell you something about really important, and we cannot let Google see this. Okay, because Google routinely violates our civil rights, and we're not going to let that happen. So we're going to censor them. We're going to censor them. This is, yeah, you think it's a free speech platform. It is a free speech platform, but we can't let them censor us. So we're going to censor them first. So we have about 3 minutes in this segment. And in 3 minutes, when we go to break, we're also going to say goodbye to YouTube. So you want to start migrating your way over to DLive or to Foxhole or to Rumble. Rumble does a really good job. And we want to build our Rumble audience. So head on over there and check it out. And what I'm going to do now is, let's see, in Foxhole, I'm going to go ahead and start up. I'm going to go ahead and turn the scratch-offs on. I think that should work. Are you guys there? Oh, Foxhole is down. I hate when that happens. Yeah, it's not streaming right now. We hate that. Yeah, I can see that. It's just frozen. Well, okay. Let's see what DLive is doing. DLive looks like it's pretty current. Yes? Yes, DLive is all right. Okay, so I'm going to build up some lemons in DLive. Let's see. We'll just build up a couple hundred there. It takes me 10 or 20 seconds here to do this, build this up. And we're going to reward our good people for making their way to DLive. DLive.tv, by the way, and it's /Brooks Agnew. If you can't remember that, go to my website, americafreeradio.com, and click on the DLive link, logo, the one with the little, pirate in the mask. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and distribute those awards in DLive, and in about 25 seconds, we'll find out what 5 lucky people will win that. Hate that Foxhole's down. Big D 1955 saying Foxhole is down.